And we are live. I first of all want to apologize for our tardiness. It was a tech issue that we were having. With that said, again, I apologize. We're coming to you a bit late, but we're still here. And what I'd like to do first is introduce my guest. For those of you who don't know, I'm in London again, and I've been here for a few weeks, and I should be here for another few weeks and going on. I should be back here at the end of April to May toward the summer. I quite like this city, but because I'm here, I had the pleasure to introduce my guest today. His name is PIERS CORBYN. He's a British weather forecaster by trade, but also known as an anti-vaccine activist. Oh.
Hey.
And we're having a bit of a tech issue there again. Away. Yeah, we're having an issue there again.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay. I think it's back now. Are we all right now?
All right. No worries.
Sorry,
no worries. I'll restart that. Just to tell you guys, I'm in London again, and I've been here for a while, and I tend to come to this city quite often. But I had the great luck to bump into my guest today. His name's PIERS CORBYN. He's a British weather forecaster by trade, and is known for his anti-vaccine activist stances. He's a former politician. He was awarded a first-class Bachelor of Science in Physics from Imperial College in London and a postgraduate Master's of Science in Astrophysics from Queen Mary College in London. Corbyn he's been a member of the Labour Party and served as a councillor in the London Borough of Southwark. And he's elder brothers the former Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn, but he left the Labour Party in 2003 due to his opposition to the Iraqi war, or the Iraq war. He's run a weather monitoring company, and he's gained prominence in the media for his predictions, but later and more so his stance on man-made climate change. Throughout the past several years, he's been one of the most prominent activists in the United Kingdom against lockdowns and the safety of the push toward vaccines that haven't been properly tested. During such time, he was slapped with a £10,000 fine under the then new corona laws restricting public gatherings. Given the current state of the world and the power of the City of London and the power that the city holds within the hierarchy of the nodes within the global system, Mr. Corbyn is running as a candidate for the office of the Mayor of London. Now, with all of that said, thanks for being here, Piers, and I'm sure much of my audience would like to hear what you have to say. So thank you very much for being here. So first off, could you explain to our audience why you're running for the office of mayor here in London?
I'm running for mayor of London on the platform Peace Now, under the party name Peace Now London, because the world is in such a dangerous state. A world war is imminent unless we stand up against it. You think about that. We've got all this bloodshed in, well, need I say, Ukraine, Palestine, Yemen, and so on. And all the politicians are going along with this, come from the World Economic Forum as well. And Israel, of course, is part of the World Economic Forum, along with Britain and America, and they're very influential parts. So my stand is peace now. We have to end this bloodshed. And I'll be really one candidate among only one standing for that. The others are all, bloodshed candidates. The different parties in Britain are all supporting in some way or other what's going on. In the Mayor of London, of course, is part of the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer is a vigorous supporter of the terrible things going on. So I'm standing under that, and if I became mayor, we would take various steps. Obviously, it'd be a big propaganda victory if I win, but there's lots of things practically the Mayor of London can do, and we'd go after the warmongers, just like world governments are saying we've got to go after CO2 with all sorts of measures. Well, we would just use their book, if you like, and change it from CO2 to warmongers and go after the warmongers. because they, if they carry on, will lead to a world war.
No, I would agree. You brought up the current mayor, and he is, along with both parties, it would seem, with the three largest conflicts that are enveloping the world, the problem with Yemen and the shipping that is going through the Red Sea toward the Suez, the crisis in Palestine, as well as the war in Ukraine. All three of these are being championed by both sides of the political aisle in most Western countries. Now, why do you think that is? And what would you do differently than the political status quo that we're seeing with regards to policy coming out of the United Kingdom?
Yes. Why are all these countries supporting it? Well, it comes from the World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum and the countries and the mega corporations in it are pressing for a new world order. And they also believe in world depopulation. And we know various things have led to depopulation of very large numbers of people, but also they are supports in order to, well, partly it's to depopulate, certainly, but it's also to destabilize the world and then justify a new world order, as they call it. So governments in each country will be weakened or even disbanded. That's what they want, another new world government. And the World Health Organization, for example, is probably the, well, certainly is the government in waiting on behalf of World Economic Forum. But to get there, they need an excuse, conflicts. And all these conflicts are part of making the chaos so they can step in and put order back out of chaos. But it's their order, not the sort of order we want. My idea of the order we want is an accountable democratic order with accountable politicians and indeed accountable science as well, so that we have the truth instead of various propaganda statements on those issues.
Okay, I would agree with that. I think that there seems to be overall within the sort of nexus of Anglo states, but also in Western Europe, there seems to be a kind of partnership toward a race toward the bottom with regards to not only their geopolitical machinations overseas, but also their domestic machinations over the population they mean to rule. I would ask you then, for example, you told me today that that you went to a march from Hyde Park Corner, and Hyde Park, I should say to those that are not familiar with London, it's a large park in the center of London, something similar to Central Park for people that are more familiar with New York City. And he marched from Hyde Park Corner to the U.S. Embassy. Now, before I'll have you answer that question, I just want to show people some video footage of that. So let me just yeah. So I'm just going to show you guys the amount of people. So one of the things you'll notice is in London, it's very difficult unless you know where to find the location and the start. You have to be on these Telegram groups, or you've got to be basically on Twitter and be following people that are organizing these things. Because if you try to just put in where is the next peace march for Gaza in London, all you're going to get is some of the marches that went on, you know, a week or two ago, right? Yeah. So I'm just going to show you guys that I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your microphone. You might want to maybe pull back or something, Piers. I'm just going to show some people this particular video just to give people an idea. I think this is Vauxhall Bridge. Is this Vauxhall Bridge you're going over?
We did go over Vauxhall Bridge. It would have been. Okay,
so this is Vauxhall Bridge. So I'm going to just share this with everyone, just so they can get an idea of the size of this. Let me see here.
Oh my goodness.
And we're having this. That I'm doing this by Wi-Fi in an underground bunker.
Wow. Well, it's a brilliant picture.
It's coming through. Let me just maybe slide the thing. This is what I'm trying to explain to the people that are watching. how gigantic these protests are. They're enormous.
Absolutely.
These things look
It was probably half a million there.
These things look almost akin to things that I saw in early 2003 before the Iraq war invasion. And as I understand it, you left the Labour Party because of their stance on the invasion of
Well,
Iraq.
I didn't actually leave at that point. I stayed in there fighting. The stance I left over was the housing policies of.
Hold on a sec, Piers. I think you're getting some feedback.
But,
can you shake your microphone a little bit or something? We're getting some static off of your microphone.
Static. Okay.
Is anyone else getting this, or is it just me? Can I get it from the microphone? Yeah, people are saying that we're getting a little bit of static. It was fine when you started, but something has crept in.
We need that for the. Yeah, but shouldn't put that a little nearer, maybe. Make the signal better. I think it's it. Is that better now?
It's better, but we're still getting a little bit of feedback. A little bit.
Okay. I don't know where the feedback's coming from, but
I'm not sure. Let me mute you and then bring you back. Hope maybe that'll work. How about now?
Yeah. Is that any better?
Okay, we'll just yeah. People are saying maybe plug and unplug it. Are you using an external microphone or one on the laptop?
No, it's all on the.
Okay. Well, I think we might just have to. People are suggesting it's YouTube doing it. But maybe what you could do is just let's go through it, see how we can do, how it'll go.
Yeah.
So
we can short sentences. Is that better now? We just unplugged the mouse.
No, it's actually worse.
Worse.
Yeah, it's actually worse. It's like a staticky thing.
Well, if we reduce the volume, would that help?
Yeah, the chat is saying that it's looking or it's sounding actually worse. Like it was coming through fine when you started. So I'm not sure what happened.
Right, let's just bring these things back here then. How about that any different? No, is that any different?
That's not any different. You know what we could do? What we could do is I will take the stream for the next 5 minutes, just telling people about my trip here in London.
Yeah.
And perhaps what you can do is reboot your computer and then rejoin with the same computer you're using.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll do
How about that?
Thank you very much.
That sounds good. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, first of all, I'm sorry about all of the issues tonight that we've had vis-a-vis the tech issues. There's nothing I can really do about it. But I am happy that you guys are here. It's my my first stream since I got here to London. I've been here for about 3 weeks now. I come here quite often, actually. I quite like the city. I should also say it's my mother's homeland. So I do have a link to these islands. It is a very strange place to be because it's very much every few years I come here. It's very, very difficult to explain to people that haven't been here, what, maybe 5, 10, 15, even 20 years ago, the scope and size of the change here. I went with a friend of mine who just returned to his home country in Hungary. And one of the reasons I've been listening to people that aren't from the United Kingdom, but have lived here for a long time, is the amount of inflation, the cost of living, and the housing prices here make this place, and I would suggest probably one of the most expensive cities on the planet. And I've been to a lot of places. I would say that it's one of the most screwed up places, if I'm trying to be charitable, that I've ever been to. I can take I can take some questions if anybody would like to ask, but with regards to my trip here. But I have seen a lot of different people, and I do like the country. Hold on, let me just adjust this microphone, this thing. I do like the country. Don't get me wrong. I'm not slagging it off for the British people that are here, but I think if anyone is considering coming to the United Kingdom, London is not really a place you want to visit. In all reality, I think if you want to visit this country, you want to go outside of London. You want to enjoy the parts of the country that are still British and still have a tradition or a history, or they have something they cling to as part of these islands. When you go to these large cities now, whether it be Berlin, Frankfurt, Paris, London, New York, Toronto, San Francisco, Sydney, it doesn't matter which one you go to. They're almost literally clone copies of each other now in this matrix of globalism. The populations are all this sort of Roman mishmash of the late empire. The shops that you would think if you're coming to a place like London, oh, I'd like to see Paddington Bear, or I'd like to go for tea, or these kinds of things. They're not really part and parcel of these islands anymore. They're more in terms of just the way that the city is. It's more global homogeneity, right? It's everywhere you go, whether again Paris, London, Toronto, New York, San Francisco, Sydney. It's the clothing stores are H&M, the food is McDonald's, the cars are Toyotas, and it's just this global homogeneity of cultures, which we're supposed to celebrate as something glorious, but it's actually, there is no diversity anymore because all of these places are turning into the same place. But the one thing is there's there was a statement here by Fear the Honey Badger, and I want to shout out to her because she's here all the time and she helps me out. She says that London is incredibly expensive, yet huge numbers of imports are able to live there. Must be subsidized heavily by the taxpayer. That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely correct. One thing I should say is that where I'm staying with a friend of mine, and he is an older guy that was able to get into the housing market quite a long time ago, and he was able to buy himself a very nice building in a very swank part of town. And when he bought it, London was just like any other place, mind you. It had its nice places. It had its but the costs weren't utterly retarded or utterly inflated. And the one thing is you're on this street, but if you go in any direction, left or right, once you get off the street, left or right, they have these gigantic council estates, as they call them. And a council estate is a large area, buildings that house people that are not able to afford renting. So what you have is a whole underclass of people that have social housing, is what it's called, I guess, in other parts of the world. And what it does is it makes it so even if you have the ability to get away, you don't have the ability to get away from, let's say, the social ills of dysfunctional behavior. Because even if you're in a very nice part of town, after the sun goes down, you're worried about your personal safety. Even if you're a guy, I mean, the only way you'd really want to, it's not like going into Mogadishu, but it's definitely one of the more frightening cities in the Western world. And you know, it doesn't, I guess if you go to the center of London, the city of London would probably be more like Manhattan. But as you go out, one of the things people a lot of times do is they try and equate, or they try and compare London with New York City. And that's absolutely not a good comparison. London is much more like Los Angeles. It's just this sprawling, excuse me, a very sprawling city that just goes on forever. And it's very low rise. And it's, you know, they have this world famous tube, but the tube is outside of the city of London is more like a commuter train. So it's more like that. Let me see. I think we've got Piers back. Let's take a look. Let's see. Piers, are you back?
Well, I am back, and can you hear me well?
Yes, and I can hear you perfectly. Excellent.
Wow, brilliant.
All right.
Well, that's what happens when you stop and start a computer, isn't it wonderful?
Well, it's
you
usually
to stop them, you have to start them.
Usually probably the best fixes many of the problems. So I was asking you before you left about you participating in the march from Hyde Park Corner to the American Embassy. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what it was about?
Well, it was massive. I didn't join it all because I was doing something just before, but you know, what you saw was what happened. I mean, it was incredible. 500,000 people probably, and they were from all over the country. I'm well, possibly half from London or even more, but you know, people came from all over the country as well because I was there collecting signatures for campaign and donations, and you know, they're all over. People from Birmingham, so they wanted to help, for example, but they couldn't. And they're all very clear. They don't want any more of these wars. They obviously, the march itself was about what's happening in Palestine and the bloodshed there. But people were very mindful of the other things. I mean, for example, when I mentioned, look, do you know, guys, that as we speak, Russian and British troops are fighting in Ukraine, and there's a NATO exercise in Finland. All of this stuff is pointing towards, well, a potential world war, and we do have to stop it. And, you know, people agreed. And that is a much bigger issue than the way the BBC and the politicians, the circus politicians, are trying to channel people into. They're trying to make it a sort of election of Muslims on one side and whatever on the other. Well, this is just ridiculous, because if Muslims or ethnic minorities decide to vote for Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, the Labour mayor of London, because he's going to help them, they're actually voting for a party which is engaged in this bloodshed. You know, I mean, so, you know, our issue can cut out that. We are the Peace Now party, and we can cut across everything. So it'll be us standing for that and other parties competing for bloodshed votes. Warmonger votes. I mean,
here's a question.
That's what's going to happen.
As
we have to stand. Yes.
As you bring up the issue of ethnic minority voting blocks, what's interesting in the United States, and I'm not sure if this is, you might be able to bring some light to that. You brought up if ethnic minorities or Muslims wish to vote for Sadiq Khan, and they do so out of ethnic solidarity, they're not being helped because they're voting for a party. They're not voting for an individual. What's happened recently in the United States during the primaries is that Joe Biden in the primary elections, and in order to vote in primaries, you have to be a registered Republican or registered Democrat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and there has been in one single primary before Super Tuesday, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been maybe New Hampshire. I can't remember. But there were over 100,000 spoiled ballots in the primary because they were the people that were spoiling their ballots were spoiling them as a protest measure for Biden's stance on Gaza and his unequivocal stance with Israel and what's happening there. And I think that there is a very large push toward trying to, you know, rein these people back in, but they're not listening anymore. Like they're seeing that these kind of parties, the right and the left, Labor and Tory, Democrat and Republican, in other countries, in Canada, liberal and conservative, they're all kind of this you know, one side and one face of the same coin. The Leviathan underneath, doesn't care about what people have to say and what they think. And I think people are starting to understand that. Now, would you say that this is possible in, for example, your country, which has an election upcoming, and it has to do so by January of next year, I believe, at the very latest.
Well, there's two things. It's very likely that the general election will be held on the same day as the mayor elections on May the 2nd.
In May.
Although
in May.
This hasn't been announced, but that's my understanding, that the powers that be want to sort of get it out of the way before it gets any worse for them. Both parties are like that. Both parties want to keep us all in the circus. They don't want independence or alternative, genuine alternative parties standing like me. But the point you make about probably largely ethnic votes voting in large numbers, protesting by spoiling their ballots, is could easily happen in Britain. Or if they have a real alternative such as me, they will vote for us. And I've been in Camden recently, and there's a lot of ethnic groups there who are not going to vote Labour. They're not going to vote for Keir Starmer, who actually is the leader of the Labour Party and an MP there. So, and they're going to vote like tribally, they're discussing it, and they just don't agree with Keir Starmer and Labour. So a real alternatives in Camden it would be amazing if perhaps Keir Starmer could win the election, so-called, nationally, but lose his own seat. I mean, lots of things are possible. We're in a situation now where everywhere around the world, all politics is crumbling, and the political main parties are desperate to keep people in check, and I'm desperate to break people out of the circus. And we can win, and I appeal to anybody out there to assist us in whatever way possible. But you can discuss that later, of course. But you think about it, this issue, this blood issue, is the issue of our time. I mean, there's many policies I've got for London, of course, some of which you touched on, but really they pale into insignificance. If we have a war, then these would go by the board for a while, won't they? Or forever.
Well, you touched on something earlier about the sort of push that you're seeing in Western capitals with regards to involving individual nations in the Ukrainian war. Last week, President Macron of France was calling other NATO members cowards because they didn't want to inject troops into the quagmire that is Ukraine. And all of these Western governments are adamantly against any kind of negotiated settlement to this crisis. Whereas you have basically the Ukraine at this point is demographically collapsing. They're running out of men to fight. They're putting women. I've seen videos on the internet of pregnant women at the front lines. I've seen people with Down syndrome being used as carriers of artillery shells from the ammo depot to the actual. I've seen some of the most horrific things, but we have a situation where all of the Western leaders, all of them in lockstep, and the only leader I can think of offhand, and some wouldn't consider his country Western, would be Viktor Orban in Hungary. He's the only one that since the beginning of this has stressed that there's no military solution to this problem. No, and it's a political solution. It's a political solution, and the longer it's held at bay, the more destruction, the more chaos, and also the economic implosion of European economies is happening in real time. You're seeing the deindustrialization of Germany. You're seeing inflation that I believe from the last statistic I read, it has put something like 4 million households since the beginning of the coronavirus. 4 million UK households have been propelled into poverty, and that's right. The consequences of all of these actions combined by Western nations are not only impoverishing our own people, they're not only causing worldwide calamity, but as you said, we're inching toward a war that could be cataclysmic, where you have the president of a NATO country, Macron, saying, all of you guys are cowards because you don't want to join in the bloodfest. Now, what would your answer to those sorts of people be?
Well, Well, we should tax the warmongers. Yes, that's what I
Can,
would
can,
do as
yeah,
mayor.
can you get into that? Because I also have, if anybody's interested, just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's also, I've also outlined your political policies. There's a ticker just below, guys, where you can find all of the information that you'll need to get in touch with
Well,
or
there we are. It's
find
going past. Yeah.
peers. And there's also in the description of the video below. So can you tell me about the warmongers and
Yes.
your
Okay.
positions
What
on
the
this?
warmongers are up to and who's doing for them, and then practical solutions. Yes. It's interesting that Ukraine was at a point of having some sort of peaceful settlement, and Boris Johnson went there and stopped it happening and wanted the war to continue. Boris Johnson
Yeah.
being the prime minister at the time. And what is Macron doing but actually sending more people to die? You see, the Russians are not going to lose in Ukraine. Everybody's losing, if you like, but the Russians are going to they're not going to lose. The solution to Ukraine is a peace conference, and we know what would result, namely, part of the Ukraine would break away. And the practical things we want, of course, as mayor, which I would be able to do, would be tax the warmongers. There's warmongers operating from London, all of them, in weapons manufacturers, weapons transport, accountants, bankers, solicitors, legal people. There's huge numbers of people involved in the war machines. And what we would do is we'd say we'll license the warmongers. That sounds ridiculous, but no, it's not. You see, taxi cabs, that's simple. They have to be licensed to operate in London. We'll say to these war industry, which they call themselves, and I'll call them warmongers, we'll say to them, you have to be in a guild of warmongers to be licensed in order to operate in London. And so if you charge them so much, it would be not profitable.
Well, this is something that is
the mayor of London has got power over these sort of things, you see.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because London is probably the keystone in the global financial system. It's unfortunately it's also known as the global money laundering capital of the planet as well, with its offshore tax havens like the Cayman Islands and Jersey and these places. And this is where a lot of the money that's coming from, as you said, bankers, accountants, and other such nefarious people and are coming from to fund the bloodshed, death, and destruction of Ukraine and Gaza. And that's a very, very interesting way of looking at it, making a guild of warmongers. I quite think that's an exceptional thing.
Yes.
There's a couple of people. This is a little bit. We'll come back to that in a minute. But there's a couple of people that have brought up, as you can see, George Galloway. He seems to be a very divisive character in the UK. I have my own sort of intersection with the man in the fact that he was with Ukraine. He did quite often streams with a friend of mine whose name was Gonzalo Lira. Gonzalo Lira was a Chilean American who was in Ukraine up until January of this year. He'd been imprisoned for making YouTube videos that were critical of the Zelensky regime and its war aims.
Yeah.
And he was imprisoned and he was murdered this January. He's passed away. He had 2 small children, and the Zelensky regime murdered him. And George Galloway was a frequent contributor on George Galloway's streams on YouTube, the mother of all talk shows. But George Galloway has won, and there's a lot of people that are talking about him in the current affairs with regards to, so George Galloway, for those of you guys who are not in our audience who don't know who George Galloway is, he's a politician who just won a by-election in the northern city of Rochdale. Am I getting that correct?
That's
Rochdale?
correct. Yep.
Yeah, and for Rochdale and cities like Rotherham, unfortunately, in the overseas, these cities have been made famous by the disregard of the authorities and the disregard they had for the ongoing and decades-long abuse of young girls perpetrated by what's euphemistically called grooming gangs in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
But when he won his by-election, he said that his win, he had spanked one cheek of Labour and the other cheek of Tories, of the Tory party. Now, do you think this was the great spanking that George Galloway has said it is? And will he have any real ability to change the course of the political machinations of Westminster as an MP? And what are your thoughts on that? About his abilities?
We urge people to vote for him, and we applaud his victory. It was excellent. I think it reflects the people being upset, despondent, or not believing anymore in the political circus. I mean, perhaps that simplifies it, but certainly up there, he managed to show that the other parties were useless, and to an extent, Labour just gave up in the face of it. It might not be so easy everywhere else, but it is the beginning, definitely, of the crumbling of the main political parties. And of course, because of that, the BBC labels George Galloway as divisive, whatever that means. Now, he actually united a lot of people in Rochdale. So what does it mean? It means he's divisive of their policies. You can agree or disagree with details of what he does. I mean, I don't mind, but, we support completely his victory, and hope that his supporters in London will vote for me as well.
Well, the thing that
a new era, I would say.
Well, you're right in the sense that people that kind of remove themselves from the establishment narratives are very much called divisive. I mean, your own detractors, as I've been reading, they've called you based on your stance on lockdowns. They've called you a conspiracy theorist. They've called you a crank. They've called you all manner of insult and derogatory
what
names.
I said was proved to be right.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I would venture most of my audience would agree with almost your stance on almost everything with regards to climate change, with regards to the vaccine, and with regards to lockdowns. I think most people would agree with you on Ukraine and Gaza. So you're not in hostile territory here. I don't think that there's going to be any kind of large number of people in my and the people watching right now would disagree. But I want to bring it back a little bit with regards to the lockdowns, and this is where I'm going to ask you a question before. Well, I'm going to ask you two questions. The first question is, do you even know how many times? Because actually, somebody brought this up when we were trying to fix our technical issues. Somebody brought it up in the chat. Is that they thought we were having a problem getting you on here is because you'd been arrested again, right? So again, oh yeah. Well, they were like, oh no, he's probably been arrested again. That's why he can't show up. But so this would be the question I ask you: is how many times can you even remember how many times in your life you've been arrested for political action?
Well, I've been arrested for 16 times for resisting the COVID stuff going on and lockdowns and things related to lockdowns. That was since May 2020. Before that, in my life, I'd been arrested probably another 30 or even 40 times on pretty minor things about obstructing pavements or whatever when I was demonstrating on housing, for example, or on people's rights in various ways. So I have been arrested quite a lot, yes.
So you've been arrested quite a lot. So I want to bring it back then. So with regards to that question, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but it's kind of funny when somebody but I think the majority of people in this audience would agree with you on the absolute destructive nature, socially, economically. But I would also venture the erosion of freedom with regards to
absolutely.
The lockdown.
It's all erosion of freedom, and that's what I've been arrested for, primarily.
Right. Now, why do you think? And this is you can give either a speculative answer or you don't even have to answer. But why do you think and I don't want to get into COVID itself as a
No.
disease, because we're not allowed to talk about these things on
Sure.
main
No, we
main
don't need to
platforms.
talk
But
about it. I mean, blood
why
is the issue now anyway.
it's ridiculous when you're not allowed to talk about some of the largest issues that are facing our planet. But these lockdowns obviously were they were instrumental in the erosion of our freedom, the destruction of our economy. I've seen studies on children being developmentally challenged now because of these lockdowns.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Why do you think, given all of this knowledge, and also I would want to bring up the same politician that you were talking about, who basically scuttled the Ukraine war and a treaty at the very beginning of this, Boris Johnson. He was caught in a party during the supposed lockdowns where everyone was drinking, hooting, hollering, having a great time, and nobody was wearing masks. And then they just put the masks on as they went outside the door, which means the political class didn't even believe in their own rhetoric. So my question to you is, why were they so insistent on these lockdowns? Because as I understand it, you got a £10,000 fine during that time for being in a group and not adhering to social distancing.
In a group of more than 10 people, God knows, there are different arrests all the time for either 2 people, 10 people, 20 people, whatever. Yes. But the exposure of the hypocrisy of the Prime Minister and all his cronies was really very important. And all right, the question is, why did he impose all these things when he knew there was actually no danger to whatever was supposed to be around? And the answer must be that he was forced into this, blackmailed or bribed or pressured, under what forces we don't know, but that must have happened. Because you see, when he started all this, when this stuff began, he was clearly skeptical himself about whether masking or lockdowns would do anything, and even possibly in the so-called dangers itself, because there's been the World Health Organization originally said there wasn't a big danger from this stuff anyway. But so what happened? Well, he suddenly got ill and then came back and said that he got very ill and now we had to buckle down. Well, very curiously, the day before he got ill, he was with my brother, who was leader of the opposition at the time, and they were shaking hands and stuff like that at a meeting along with some officials. Yet Boris got this highly contagious disease and my brother didn't catch anything from him. So what was really going on? But so it seems to me that Boris was taken away and pressured. I don't know. This is conspiracy theorism, if you like, but something happened.
It's speculation. It doesn't have to
carry out this nonsense. And then perhaps he didn't mind getting exposed. I don't know. But Partygate comes along and it's clear to the whole world that actually the leading lights in our political system never believed it at all.
I actually wouldn't even use the word conspiracy theorists when you're talking and speculating.
Fact.
This when people use that word, it's usually meant to denigrate anyone that goes outside the box. The box
Felix, yesterday's conspiracy theory is today's truth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can go from the Gulf of Tonkin to just the invasion, the first invasion of Iraq. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It just takes a little time. Exactly. Today's conspiracy is tomorrow's truth. But I would agree with you. I supposedly had COVID 3 times because they make you when you get sick, they'd make you get tested, and I had it 3 times. But it was just like having a cold.
Yeah,
and it lasted like 2 days, and it was just like in wintertime. In wintertime, it's common to get the common cold. It's very. I mean, I've had. If it's cold outside, it's snowing, it's rainy, it's damp. You get wet, you're walking around outside, wind's blowing, you're going to come in, you're going to get a sniffle. It happens, and I had it supposedly 3 times. And, I'm not on a ventilator, and I haven't been put 6 feet under yet. So I know like a lot of people in the comment section are saying fake PCR tests. Even interestingly enough, the man who invented the PCR test said that it was not even useful with regards to detecting this so-called variant of
Yeah,
COVID.
he did.
So
He said exactly that.
yeah. So I mean, that was a big cash grab too, because just the whole thing. I mean, if you had Pfizer stock or Moderna stock or AstraZeneca stock, you probably made a lot of money between 2020 and 2023. So, but I mean,
Completely.
a lot of times in these situations, you got to follow the money. Is what I would probably say. Now,
Yeah,
we
I
talked
would say
about
the
that.
COVID story was for the jab rather than the jab being there to deal
Yeah.
with COVID.
Well,
It's to
exactly. I mean,
make
I
people
always
have the
thought it
jab.
weird when they said the only reason that we're going to have to keep lockdowns is because some people won't get vaccinated. But the thing is the people that are being vaccinated, they're being vaccinated against the people that are unvaccinated. So, I mean, it was just this tautological argument that you'd have to be almost intellectually impaired to believe. I mean, but the levels of insanity during those days, and it's funny how people are just forgetting about it. Okay, whatever, brush it under the rug. But it absolutely was a completely hysterical and insane few years there.
Yes.
But anyways, I want to move on to your thoughts with regards to, and it goes back to what we were saying, is that I
Yeah.
generally don't like to use the language of our detractors, people that refuse to listen to any other kind of narrative other than the one that's spun by the mainstream media, the government, or other organs of powers, whether they be academia or what have you. Is that, for example, when people speculate on something, they're immediately called a conspiracy theorist. You're a
Yes.
conspiracy theorist, which I won't use that language. I'll say,
Mhm.
well, these people are
Well,
just speculating. But
I mean, there's
now,
no conspiracy when I say we're in a well, blood is being spilled. I mean, it has to be stopped. I mean, they
yep.
can't argue with this, but they probably will.
Well,
I mean, what else?
here's the question. This will relate. We're going to go back to the march that you had in Gaza today, and
Mm,
afterwards, I'd like to ask you about Speaker's Corner today.
okay.
But the question I would have, and what I was bringing back with the idea of conspiracy theorists, what are your thoughts on the ever increasing, and this is happening in literally every Western country, the ever increasing encroaching of what they call so-called hate speech laws, along with the use of
Mm,
conspiracy theorists. And it's been a term that I think I've been called in the media. The New York Times called me a conspiracy theorist once, and I think you've been called a conspiracy theorist many a times. I
oh,
think it's
completely,
actually,
all the time. Yeah.
yeah. And why? What do you think of all of these new? And they're also looking at. They're talking about. I think her name was Sylvia Braverman. She's the
Yes.
Indian.
Yes.
She was the former cabinet minister in
Yes.
the parliament there, or in Rishi Sunak's cabinet,
Yes, sir.
and
Yeah.
she was talking about the kind of people such as yourself that are going on these marches that are 500,000 big. You said 500,000 strong.
Yeah.
That
Half
these
a million.
people
That was amazing.
are all filled with hate, and these marches are a form of festering hate upon the country. And the people
Mhm.
who are speaking out against what's happening in Gaza are people whose hearts are filled with hate, and their voices need to be shunted. They need to be closed, and if necessary, they need to be charged with new sort of Orwellian laws in order to stop any sort of questioning of the establishment's narrative. Now,
Yes.
what do you think? What do you think of this sort of overreach? Is that what I would call it? This
Mm.
push towards silencing anyone who disagrees with the establishment narratives. And I would use Ukraine, Gaza,
Mm.
lockdowns, all of these things that your campaign is looking at or talking about. What do you think about these things?
Well, I think they do want to have more and more laws to terrify people, and they make these crazy statements to try and justify that. However, and they have got some more laws, but first of all, laws can only be implemented if people comply. And of course, they had lots of laws about lockdowns and so on, and people didn't comply, so they haven't been able to go ahead with that. Now, as far as what Braverman's up to, I think it's completely over the top. Well, it's lies, but in terms of getting somewhere, I don't think it will, because I was there. I've been on many of these marches. They're all friendly people. They, you know, hugging each other. They're chanting friendly things. It's not in any way the sort of thing that she pretends it is. Now, look, 500,000 people there, and there's others being marched. So there's at least 1 million people being involved in these marches. Look, if each of them talk to 10 others and say, look, it's not true, and they will say that, then, you know, the population as a whole is going to know that she's talking lies. And you see, if you like, the movement has grown so big now, they can't put a lid on it. So what she's doing is a desperate last-ditch attempt, I would say. And we have to move on and break the circus. And peace now is the way where we can actually win against this terrible things coming ahead.
And I would agree with you. This is something that it seems all of our leadership in all of our Western nations are hell bent on quite the opposite. And I think that's why it's very important for people such as yourself to get their voice out there. And people, as you said, all of these people that were on the march with you, friendly people. I mean, did you ever at any time feel threatened by the people in these marches?
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
And these, I should say, for people that aren't in the UK right now, I've been reading the newspapers and I've been watching politics here quite a bit since I arrived, and a lot of the people in positions of authority or so-called authority have been denigrating these marches and those that attend them as people filled with hate that want to see people killed or just they take it to the most ridiculous conclusions. Insofar as where this is going. Now, okay, so let's see. Now, getting back to the Gaza situation again, for you just went to this particular march. How do you see this situation in Gaza playing out as it is in its current form right now?
Well, world opinion is now really isolating Israel. So, you know, it could be that there'll be military action from all the countries around Israel. I don't know, but I mean, I don't think those leaderships want to do that, but they might be forced to do it. And that is one possible outcome. And that would be, you know, terrible. We don't want to have anyone killed. You want to end all of this. That's one outcome. The other is that internally in Israel, people will just say, look, we don't want this. And there is a lot of internal opposition to the Israeli government from people in Israel. I mean, basically, the best thing to happen would be a revolution in Israel itself, where they say, look, we've got to live in harmony with our neighbors, either a two-state solution or one solution as for the whole area. I don't know, but that's up to them. But clearly, there's enough resistance on the ground, potentially, I think, in Israel for that to happen. And of course, Netanyahu himself is avoiding, probably being in jail for corruption by involvement in this war, which is a kind of side issue, if you like. But, you know, I think the opposition is growing so much that Israel can be stopped. But, the death happening now is so horrible. I mean, the blood is being bled all the time, and it has to end now, and that's what I'll be saying. And I think people agree with that. They've just got to break out of this circus mind. Oh, if you don't vote Labour, then the Tories will get in, so we won't vote for PIERS. You see, I've stood in elections before. People said, PIERS, I agree with you completely. And after the election, I say, oh, well, I was going to vote for you, but I didn't, because if I didn't vote for them, the others would get in. But the two sides end up with the same thing anyway, as George Galloway rightly pointed out in Rochdale.
Well, this is mirrored right now in the United States with the Democrats and the Republicans, and they have a third-party candidate, which I think would electrify the electorate, is Robert Kennedy Jr. And he's right on almost everything except for Israel, in my opinion. He's right on absolutely everything. He's right on the vaccines. He's right on the lockdowns. He's right on the Ukraine. He's right on everything. But the problem is people say, well, if I vote for him, then Biden will get in, or if I vote for him, Trump will get in. But then again, I mean,
it'd be better to vote for him than either of them. But on the other hand,
exactly,
it's terrible that he's supporting Israel. That is completely terrible, and it's worrying. But then they're all supporting Israel. Is there another one who doesn't support these wars? I mean, that's what we need. a proper.
Well,
peace
Robert
candidate.
Kennedy Jr. doesn't support the war in Ukraine, but the problem was with it within the rubric of American political the establishment. Not supporting Israel is basically a stance a politician can't take if he wants to be elected. And it has a lot to do with the AIPAC and Israeli money sloshing through the political system. So I agree with you. Like somebody like yourself, I mean, a third party is necessary in all of our countries rather than just voting for the worst. You're voting against the worst. Like you're not voting for who you want.
You vote for what you think is the least worst, and
the least worst. Yeah,
you know, and everyone's voting for what they think is the least worst, and you get the same result, whatever. And it's really has to be exposed and ended. See, one thing we have in practical terms is politicians have to be accountable. So we'd say, look, if after a year 20% of the voters think they want a new election because their politicians on a U-turn, then you should have a new election locally. You know, make things accountable. But that's the last thing they want. They want people in who are going to be there for 4 years. It could be bribed, blackmailed, tricked, brainwashed, or whatever. And you know, the BBC lies about things to them, and then they will comply. That's what it's all about.
I should go back and both of us reiterate that I'm getting some comments in the comment section saying F Palestine, you anti-Semitic losers. Neither of us are at all
anti-Semitic in any way. Look, I've employed Jewish people, lots of them in my
and neither am I. I would just say that we're both
I was married 22 years to a Jewish woman.
Yeah, I've heard that, and there's one story. I won't bring it up on here. Maybe we'll talk about it later. But I remember there was something that involved genes and something. Anyway, I've heard a story about that since we met the other night. Anyway, but no, neither am I. And I think both of us, what we're talking about is in the situation in Palestine, Israel, the situation in Ukraine and Russia, and also in Yemen and places like Myanmar. All of these places, human beings, we shouldn't, especially given the amount of destructive power that we've got now in the 21st century, we shouldn't be solving our differences down the barrel of a gun. We should be solving them at tables and talking about them and working them out. In my opinion, if we
don't stop it now, it will get worse. It will expand.
I completely agree.
Tax these people doing these things. That will shake things up. And the arguments about in the Yemen, for example, the people they're bombing there are meant to be, they claim they're attacking ships, but they're bombing lots of people inland in the Yemen. They're nothing to do with attacks on the ships. But the answer to the attacks on the ships is stop ships helping what's happening, what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, you see. That would be the answer to end attacks on shipping. But instead, you bomb people in the Yemen who are actually nothing to do with attacks on shipping. I mean, it makes no sense. If you want peace, then you've got to take action against the warmongers. And that's what I'll be doing. You see, who is licensing or hiring these ships in London? What are they doing? So there'll be shipping companies involved in the war. So I'll say, no, you guys, you've got to join the worshipful company of warmongers. I mean, because they're called worshipful companies, these things in London. And if you don't join it, you'll be fined. And if you do join it, we're going to be discussing what you're up to. I mean, there has to be serious measures. Like governments are talking about, as I said, CO2 being a problem, measures against CO2. Well, war's a problem. Measures against warmongers.
Yeah, I mean, if they could take measures against cow farts that are causing climate change, cow farts. Yeah, I mean, if you could take measures against cow farts, you could take measures against war.
Completely, yes, that's absolutely right. Look, America was covered in bison before, therefore there should have been runaway global warming. Well, there was nothing when Britain invaded North America. It was actually cold. I mean, it's a complete nonsense. What they're talking about there is actually fake physics. And if you want to know more on that, go to weatheraction.com and you can download documents about this. I mean, that's not what I'm here to talk about specifically, but since you mentioned it.
Of course. And I should for those of you that have just joined who have just joined the stream, PIERS is a weather forecaster by trade, and he's got degrees in physics as well as in astrophysics. And he's not talking out of his behind, as it were. He's not pulling sunshine out of his behind. He's actually a person that has the credentials to be able to speak on that particular issue. Now, before we get to the question section in this, I just want to ask you a couple more questions with regards to, and because the one thing is that because we started late, I think some people left, some people came back later, so people might not have heard what we were talking about at the beginning of this. Now, we're talking about your particular stance, and you're running for mayor of London. What would be your agenda, and how would you implement it? We were talking about taxing the warmongers and these kinds of things, because we're going to be getting to the question section soon. So let's get into you. What is your agenda should you be elected mayor of London?
Right. It's practical ways to attack the warmongers, tax them to the hilt, tax them till they give up, make war unprofitable, make the people investing in warmongers invest in something else. I mean, there's plenty of things they could invest in. Actually, invest in council housing, for example. So make it costly. And I believe we can, well, I know we can do this through the, as we said, the Worshipful Guild of Warmongers, if you like. But there's all sorts of names you can adopt it, but they've got to get a license to operate in London, and we tax them, just like they tax people, all sorts of people they don't like. Like for CO2, they're of course taxing everyone for too much CO2. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've been charged £51,000 tax for driving my car around. I mean, it's crazy, and I haven't paid it. And there's a long story there, but don't worry. The point is that everyone who hears that story, they know, what, really? Well, if they can do that for CO2 or pollution, as they claim, then we have to do the same back. It's reasonable. My policies are reasonable. They'll say they're extreme, but look, it's a reasonable thing. Stop the bloodshed.
Absolutely. And also, I'd like to interject as well. If you guys take a look at the stream as it's going, there's a ticker on the bottom, and it gives the hashtags of Pierre's main points as his agenda for running for mayor of London. It has, it's going by right now. It has his WhatsApp. It has his email. It has all of his contact details. And if you're too lazy to just write those down, they're also in the description of this video, and you can find those and just click on those or cut and paste those. Join whatever you want. You're also looking for. Sorry, go ahead.
Carry on. No, you finish.
You're also, there's donations for Peace Now London. It has an account number, sort code, media donation inquiries. Can you tell us a little bit about you're looking for help in your quest to
very much so
the two-party Sadiq Khan?
Yeah, you think about it. You people listening could make the difference between a world war or not. I mean, seriously, this is a moment in time where we can make a difference. So we need the cost to joining we need £24,000 very quickly. Obviously, we've got some, but not much at all. So please, we've got 2 weeks or less even to get that money. Less than 2 weeks. So people should give generously, very generously, and bring in people with large amounts of money. Look, there might be someone there with a few thousand quid, a small millionaire or even a part millionaire who could be crucial in saving the world. It's about blood. It's about blood. Taxing the warmongers, taxing bloodshed.
Are you able
the only candidate doing this? The only candidate.
Are you able to take donations from overseas as well? For example, an American who's watching this and he hates the two-party state of his country, or an Australian, for example, same thing, and they would like to give to your campaign. Would they be allowed to do that?
Yes, they can, but we would have to declare if it's over a certain amount. So please, though, if someone's with big money from overseas, email us and we will discuss how to deal with that.
Okay.
And there's phone numbers there, and the email support@peacenowlondon.uk. But that would be very useful, of course.
All right, good. So we're gonna do one last question, and then we're gonna go to the questions from the audience. So I've just put
Yes.
in, if anybody wants to ask Piers a question, all you have to do is in the chat write a big Q, a capital Q before your question, so I know it's a question, and then just Q, and then what do you think about X, for example? And I'll start picking the ones that come in that look like they might be relevant to the conversation that we're doing. You know, we can't talk about, cow farts for an hour, or
No,
it's not going to
but
happen.
anyway, yeah, absolutely. And on the
Right.
financial support, please, anyone with ideas, even from overseas, email us and
Okay.
we'll work out
Okay.
actual
And the
ways.
email,
Obviously, there are rules about this.
the email to contact is in the ticker, and it's in
Yep.
the description of the video, guys.
Correct.
All right. So going to questions. First question is, what changes would you like to see in policing for London if you became the mayor? Are there any changes that you'd like to see?
Yes. Well, we have currently a two-tier policing system whereby the police discriminate against, activists like myself who are standing up for human rights and against the war and against bloodshed. And then sometimes others, such as Extinction Rebellion, get away with monstrous road blockages and all that
Oh yeah,
to save the
absolutely.
planet, as they say. So I would say because I'll be in charge of the police, I say, look, we got to have uniformity, guys. You've got to implement things uniformly. We're not having any more two-tier policing, and neither are we going to have unnecessary arrests. I mean, they're just going to waste police time on those things. There's other things police need to be doing, combating knife crime, for example. There's loads of stuff, and they don't need these paramilitary formations which happened at the lot. Not this Palestine demo, because there's so many they couldn't do much. But the last one, there was a smaller one last weekend, and the police in military formation surrounded them and shoved them out of Trafalgar Square and so forth, and made it some zone to stop people moving in it. I mean, it's still tyranny, completely unnecessary. They weren't dangerous people at all.
It's anarcho tyranny. It's having two sets of laws for two different people. I remember just watching the news when I was wasn't able to travel anywhere. They had a Black Lives Matter rally at Whitehall, and they were spray painting and vandalizing the statue of Churchill in Parliament Square there at the park, and they whatever, and the police did nothing. And then a week later, they had anti-lockdown protests, and the police brought out the nightsticks and just started beating people.
Exactly.
So I mean, this is very much true. Another question. I'll get to the question about Sam Melia later, because a few people have asked that, but it doesn't really relate to London. So so we'll get to that question in a minute. There's a couple of just inane questions. What do you eat? Do you have any
bread? Yeah, my whole life I've been brought up on peanut butter.
I love peanut butter too. One of my favorite foods.
I just didn't like meat, and so I'm a kind of vegetarian, but not 100% vegetarian. Now that Bill Gates and others have been telling us to be veggies, I don't want to be, so I do eat chicken a bit now. But I'm largely vegetarian, and I have no sugar. Basically, I don't eat sugar. All these sugary drinks, sugary this, sugar that, don't do it. It's very unhealthy.
I would actually agree with that, because I am a vegetarian, and I would 100% agree with that advice. Also, staying away from excess amounts of sugar, guys. Coca-Cola, Pepsi. If you need the carbonation, just get carbonated water, sparkling water. Okay, we have a bit of a detractor here in a question, because I don't want to give you softball questions on everything.
Fair enough. No,
aren't the warmongers equally the Hamas fighters on October 7th, or do they not count? You can tax because you can't tax them, maybe because you can't tax them.
Oh, I see. Well, look, it's all blood, and we're against blood. I mean, if there was a genuine or not a genuine attack on October the 7th, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. People were killed. We shouldn't be doing that at all. I mean, I think personally, October the 7th, what happened was well, it's blood, but of course, I know what the listeners are asking is well, perhaps they're not asking, but a lot of people say, was it real or not? Because basically the gates are opened, and what happened then became an excuse for the massacre and bloodshed happening now. And we're just against all this bloodshed. Look, I'm against Hamas doing anything, attacking anybody as well. You know, all of these things have to stop. We have to have a different way forward.
There's been a number of questions about.
Well, we can't tax Hamas. That's true, but you know, I certainly would oppose anything, any killings of anybody.
Right. I mean, it'd be harder to tax Hamas because their money flow doesn't come through the London. So yeah, I can see that.
Well,
so
we might do. We'd look into that. If somebody said they did, we would look into that. You know,
you never know. I mean,
about that. We're against all bloodshed.
And
we will tax it.
Okay, so there's been a lot of questions about an individual. His name is Sam. I might not pronouncing his surname correctly, Melia, and he was in prison for 2 years in the United Kingdom just recently for having stickers on his hard drive that said things like "It's okay to be white." Britain will be a minority. British Indigenous Britons will be a minority by 2060 or something, or sooner. And people are asking about the two-tiered law again, the way law is interpreted, where there was at the same time there was a migrant that had just came over on one of these small boats recently, and he raped a young girl, and I think he only got maybe a community service order, something like that. So I guess the question people will ask is, being that there is a two-tiered system, and myself, I grew up in Canada, so we have all kinds of laws for the Indigenous people, the Native people of Canada. The question would be, let's see, could you see yourself recognizing Indigenous rights for the British? Now the question being is because there's only one group of people. There's only one group of people that are not a protected class, and those are the Indigenous people of Britain. So would you see them? Could you see any kind of Indigenous rights the same way Canadian Indians and American Indians or Australian Aboriginals?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but first of all, the law.
Well, that's the question coming from the audience.
That's the question. No, I understand. It's you know, it's anyone can ask anything. Let's be clear. The law has to be applied equally to everybody, irrespective of their ethnicity or religious whatever, or wealth or sexuality or whatever. And that is how I would start. Now, then people can complain about this has been unfair application of law, and we would say, well, okay, let's stop it. Let's see what is really going on. And I'd say to the police, well, why are you arresting these people, not those?
Okay.
And when the judges are doing things which are clearly biased, well, again, you know, because I've had bias against me, but of course, you know, it looks like there's bias in favor of certain things which are bad. It's a complicated thing, but I think another question to ask is, why are we hearing about this? Because obviously, I'm not saying that we know rapes happen and they're all bad completely. Now, there's probably a lot of rapes happen which you aren't told about, but they choose this one, which is very bad, yes, but they choose a certain one in order to make a story to put forward in this coming election that this is going to be Islams and ethnic minorities against the English or something, right? Now, you know, we don't need special rights for anyone. We want law for everyone, and we
one law for every person that's here is what you're saying.
Completely,
like one law, not all of these sort of different laws for. It depends on who you are.
See, they do all these. Yes, all this. Your ID is this or that, you know, and therefore you've got this or that law. Well, those are there to divide us, you see, and make people oppose little groups instead of uniting as the working class against the mega corporations or the whole people against the warmongers.
Well, here would be the one question I would have for you, and this comes from me, and we'll get back to the audience as well. When you bring up the idea of the working class, it seems to me the traditional working class parties in every Western democracy, and I say those with air quotes, democracies, they basically abhor the working class. Most of these people, whether it's the Democrats in the United States, the Liberals in Canada, the Labour in the UK, they're not made up by the work. These parties are not made up by the working class anymore, and they almost hold the working class in disdain.
Yes,
so would you not
that is
agree that there needs to be a revival, like just get rid of labor, and or maybe have labor for what it is now, a big tent of cosmopolitan, city dwellers, college kids, ethnic minorities, and super woke people, and then actually have a party for the working class people that do the plumbing, build the bridges,
of
do
course.
the bricklaying. Like there doesn't seem to be a party in any of these countries
No,
for the working class.
But you see, the Labour Party was that, or was set up as
It
that,
was.
and then
It was.
infiltrated and controlled. And of course, this is going to happen in all parties unless you have accountability. If you have accountability, so you can get rid of people who do U-turns, then it happen. But I think also within the Labour Party there were things which you could see what went on. Today was Tony Benn's 10 years since his birth, death. Sorry, that's ridiculous. His death. And Tony Benn, he was a very famous left-wing politician in Britain, for those who need to know that. He used to say the Labour Party's a bird needs two wings, a left wing and a right wing. So we have to have a Labour Party of a left wing and a right wing. Well, yes, but you see, the consequence of that is this kind of muddling through that we got, and really the mega corporations starting to rule the Labour Party. It would have been more sense if it said, well, we only want a party for the actual working class, and the rest we don't want it. But this is how things worked out. So I think it's not a simple thing, but I agree with you in principle, and the answer is accountability and clear issues. And obviously now we have one which can unite. Most voters are working class, and I want the whole, if you like,
the vast majority of people living in these countries are working class.
Yes.
No, I'd agree. I would just sort of finish that up with it seems to me like the traditional working class parties now, like Labor, they'd be probably more concerned with things like making hate speech laws for misgendering someone, rather than having money for schools in areas that are places that are less wealthy for children to be able to be on an even keel.
We need more council housing.
For example, like that, and money for schools, and money for these kinds of things, like so people can rise to their potential. For example, a lot of people are talking about the Bank of England and how, but I don't think you'd have any power over that. I'm just trying to keep it to something that you would be able to have
the Bank of England and all this, the City of London, of course, is
the city
fundamental to the war machine. Now they're not going to like me at all, but they've got to comply the same. I am the mayor of London, and if they don't want it, there must be things to do. I mean, they have electricity that comes through London and so forth. I mean, there'll be practical things. We got the tube system. They use that. I mean, come on, they've got to play the game. Not the game. Let's say
they can't keep pretending they're separate.
Yeah. Well, legally, it's very interesting what they are, but practically, let's be clear, they have to comply to a democratic process, and we will go after them insofar and where they are warmongers, and they are to a very large extent.
Anything, and I should stress to my audience, anything that goes after the kinds of issues that he's talking about deserves some kind of support. Going after these warmongers, going after the left party, the right parties, going after the city of London, right there. When one of my last videos, guys, recently was on the city of London. If you haven't watched it, if you don't really understand how the city of London operates, please check it out. It's in the catalog, maybe one or two videos back. There's another question that comes, and it asks, what will you do about ULEZ? I'm not exactly sure what ULEZ is.
ULEZ is
the question is, and net zero as an international policy. Oh, you can see it. Okay.
Yes.
AMV pay for mile cameras.
Yes. The ultra low emission zone is what that stands for. And that is the rule whereby older cars, which are deemed to be inefficient and polluting, have to pay extra to drive around London, namely £12.50 a day. Now, I have such a car, a 1995 Vauxhall Cavalier, drove it all over the place, and they had fines, and I didn't pay this charge. So you get a fine for not paying the charge, then a fine for not paying the fine, and so it goes on. And you end up having to pay £350 a day for all the fines not paid. So I was sent a bill of £61,000, and they confiscated the car. And then I went to an auction where they had to sell the car back or sell it. And I bought the car back for £850, and their 61,000 is gone. So, we have to combat them. Now, the slogan is drive at wheel, do not pay, and, support the taking down of the cameras, which are used to spot people. So what I would do on day one, I would end ULEZ over the whole of London. So all of these older cars, which are not polluting because they pass their MOT, Ministry of Transport test, they would be allowed around. And I support the recycling of old cars, i.e. using them instead of destroying them and building these, in fact, highly polluting electric vehicles, which are causing deaths in the Congo from the mining operations concerned. So let's be clear. On that, I would end ULEZ immediately. And also any talk of pay per mile, because, of course, some politicians will say, oh, we'll end ULEZ, but they will bring in pay per mile, which is fairer, they'll say, directed against everybody driving anywhere, including electric vehicles. Well, that is, look, people have fuel. You buy petrol. That's a tax per mile anyway. So what is all this stuff about? It's about control, control, control. And, we have to, and I would be the liberating force to end all these control operations on us.
Okay, I'm going to only take a couple more, guys. Get your questions in, because I don't want to take up all of Piers' evening, because it is
it's okay. It's my birthday today, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I know that when we met. Happy birthday to you. Yeah. And
thank you very
Piers
much.
Is spending his birthday with us. I know you're having your party tomorrow.
So give us more money. Think of it.
Exactly,
birthday present, double whatever you were going to give. No, 10 times whatever you were going to give.
Exactly. Because we were talking about that.
Times. I'm 77 years old today, so multiply what you were going to give by 77.
You're having your party at the same place we met the other day, right? Is that correct?
We are, yes.
I'm not going to say where that. I'm not going to say where that is, but I'm just saying, because I remember it was going to be your birthday today. So happy birthday to you. We've got kind of a funny question. How do you feel about making St. George's Day a national public holiday? It's kind of a
well, that's fine. I'm
silly question.
Public holidays. Well, I'll be all right. I mean, do they have a holiday in Wales for St. David's Day? I'm not sure. But I would be in favour of that. I mean, I think it was one of my brother's policies, actually, is to make national holidays for each of the parts of the United Kingdom on their days. Well, yes, I would say.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to just get a couple more because, as I said, I don't want to get. And I'm also, guys, I'm not going to take ones that are obviously just, kind of silly.
Well, there's tons of policies you've got in practice, if I'm there, but they'll all be democratic. We discuss them. We won't just impose them. Things like, should there be national holidays or not? Well, we'd have a sort of referendum or some vote to work out properly what people think about such a thing. Clock changing times, those stuff, end them or not, for example. I would say end all that clock changing nonsense, but it's something to be discussed.
Okay, here's a question, and this seems to be it's become the number one issue for voters in the United States. I apologize, I don't know what it is in the United Kingdom, but immigration is now the number one issue because of what people are now referring to as the invasion of the southern border with Mexico, where there has been, I think, approximately close to 8 million people, 7 point and change illegal migrants that have entered the United States since Joe Biden took over his presidency. And that number is a larger number than the population of 36 separate states, 36 out of 50 states. So this has become the number one issue. Since I've come to the United Kingdom, I've become aware of what they're calling the small boat problem and the people coming over. So the question from Spartacus is, would you support the increase or decrease of immigration into England?
Well, first of all, I'd say that the war issue is above all, and that's what I would be concentrating on. Absolutely. Okay. The bloodshedding has to end. But obviously, it is a fair question, and people are concerned. I would say, look, genuine refugees have to be looked after and accepted. But a lot of this stuff going on is, I think, engineered by the powers that be. One, to decrease wages. I mean, I've met Romanians that said to me, "We are better than the Poles." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "We accept lower wages." Well, what's this about? I mean, everyone should have fair wages, but how are these people brought here, and why are they brought here? I mean, the big mega corporations have to be asked what's going on. The government has to be asked what's going on, because obviously there has to be a limit to these things. But genuine refugees must be helped.
Okay, genuine refugees, but as far as I understand, there's a large portion of the people coming over on these small boats are from Albania, and as far as I know, there's no war in Albania. So,
well, exactly.
As you're saying, we've
No
got
war
other
in Albania.
we've got other questions.
People
We've got other
knows.
questions along those lines, guys. But there's another one, but I think
Let's be
he's
clear.
kind of answered.
We don't want to get distracted into. See, that's the sort of thing the BBC want to talk to me about, rather than
Right.
massacres happening in the numbers of countries, and they're getting worse. You see, I mean, so that's my number one thing.
All right, I've got one from my
now.
mod, and she is, and we're going back to a question we had previously,
Right. Okay.
and she's asking, are there any working people left in Labour, in the Labour Party? Is the question she's asking.
I know a few who've hung on in there, but they're extremely disillusioned. I mean, most of them are sort of middle class professionals who believe they should be telling the lower classes what to do. That is how it is, and it is a disgrace.
It seems to me it's really sad, because a lot of these comments, I just brought one out from the pile of them. It says Labour Party has destroyed Britain. Tories aren't much better. It seems to me the people in the UK, like the people in many countries, are just completely disillusioned because there's no choice, right? There's no choice for them, because they feel if they vote for this one, they'll destroy it. But then if they vote for that one, it'll just get worse. And this one it's like a merry-go-round,
It's a false choice. It's a circus. Yeah. And of course, a lot of the public think people like me as well as part of the circus, because they see us, we stand for election. But I'm not part of the circus. I'm an anti-politician, actually. I mean, if I wanted to be a politician, I would have gone into it as a career, but I haven't done that. I've just had to go in when there's things to be done. And that is what I'm here for. But accountability is the issue. And, and I've seizing upon this issue of our time.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going through a couple more. Okay, I've got one from Sparky. He's saying, I'm going to have to plead ignorance on this one. What about George Galloway's party? Isn't it a workers' party?
It is. Well, it's called the Workers' Party. Well, that's good. I mean, does it have working class people in it? Well, it does. Yes, of course. No, I'm not part of George's party, but I've spoken at meetings alongside him in the past before he set it up, and I'm sure his supporters generally in London will be voting for me.
Okay, that's great.
So we want to work together there's many different parties. I mean, we have a thing called the United Front, where lots of people are trying to work together and support each other on key issues. And my key issue, of course, is stop these wars. It's peace now.
All right. Going back to, we were talking about the city of London, and this guy looks like he might be from Wales, because he has a little Welsh flag on his flag. He says, what is your opinion on usury? I guess what he's talking about is, what do you think about the excessiveness? I had friends that have come to this country, to the UK, from places like Hungary and places like the Czech Republic and places like even from the Netherlands, that have left because they tried to make it in London, but it became so outrageously expensive for them. They go into credit card debt, and then these credit cards are just completely out of control insofar as how much interest they charge. I think it was, he was telling me it was like 29% on the credit card debt. What would you do to rein in this kind of stuff that's going from the city of London?
Well, on those sort of things, I think there has to be lines drawn. Now, I hope should think the mayor will have some powers over this, but this usury of these sort of percentages is completely ridiculous. I mean, I would say 0% is a fair thing, frankly. or something which is the same as inflation.
Mm,
I mean, why should it be that someone with money can just accumulate a lot more? I mean, that can't be right.
Okay, going
So
back
I
to
would
that.
say yes, action, but we don't have an answer. But of course, one reason for the very high cost of everything is the warmongers and what they are charging. I mean, they make vast profits, and who in the end provides, for these profits? It's working people. That's where it all comes
Yeah,
from.
there.
The energy prices have gone up, they say, because of the war in Ukraine. Well, it's not true as far as I can see logically, but nevertheless, it's an excuse. Or maybe the extra money you're paying for your electricity bill is indirectly going towards these different wars. I mean, quite likely it is indirectly because it's all government income, isn't it?
There's another one talking about like the push for electric cars. You were talking about the ultra low emission zones. Would you? And you were talking about your Vauxhall from what was the year? It was
1995.
95 Vauxhall. Would you also push out this just scramble to make all cars electric?
Oh, and absolutely. I'd end that completely. I'd end the discrimination in favour of electric vehicles. I think we need to look into the car insurance. Why has car insurance gone up so much? I suspect it's to pay for the insurance of electric vehicles, which, when they catch fire, cause massive explosions and are very costly and cause other damage. So there's all sorts of things going on. No, I would say that we should end electric vehicles because, well, in the end, they will end because the cost of a replacement of the batteries is very high. So people buy these electric vehicles, and that'll be the end of them, and they won't be able to buy another one. And other vehicles, they'll be trying to prevent them being produced. And we're against the favouring of electric vehicles completely. There has to be anti-pollution things, but genuine anti-pollution. The tube trains are 40 times more polluted than the roads anyway, in terms of small particles.
Somebody was explaining that to me just yesterday or the day before, like getting onto a tube versus the roads. The particles, when you get on there, they're almost getting onto the. So for people that haven't been here, the tube is the colloquial name for the subway system here in London. And when you go from the outside, the particles, the contaminants, the unhealthy particles in the air aren't that bad on the streets. But once you make your way down into the underground of the subway, they go up. I think it was 400 becomes like it's toxic. 400 parts.
Oh yeah,
per,
well, it can go.
but
It's lots of that. It can be easily 100 times more than the street, but the average is
yeah. It is. This guy was telling me it was like 250. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. I mean, that's unacceptable. The answer to the real pollution, of course, is measures to extract more better catalytic converters in cars and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. The so-called measures against pollution are nothing of the sort. They're just there to control and make money.
You don't have to answer this one because it's kind of a silly question. By the way, there's been a whole slew of people giving you a happy birthday. So
right,
just so you know.
Well,
lots of
send me
people
a present then.
Yeah,
send me a present. It's the only day I can ask for this like this, isn't it?
Exactly, it is. Yeah. So lots of people have been giving you happy birthday presents. Ways to send any kind of birthday present is in the ticker and in the description below. These you don't have to answer this one, but they're saying PIERS CORBYN, the great value Piers Morgan. And I've seen you face off with that man previously. I have never had the opportunity to meet him. Do you want to maybe give your opinion of the man or his
well, yeah, I mean,
you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Well, I would say it was entertaining, and I stood my ground when the three of them just shouted at me rather than let me answer. And interestingly, they didn't invite me back next time, even though we'd had an even bigger demonstration against lockdowns, etc. So clearly, I got the better of him, though it wasn't easy. It's worth having a look though at that film. When I look at it, I think, wow, that was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's I only really knew who he was because he tried to make a name for himself. He moved over the pond and was working in the United States had his show, and I think American audiences just didn't like the guy, and
No,
he
good.
was
I'm glad they
basically
didn't, because I don't
he
either.
was I don't even think he lasted a few months, and he was basically packed his bag and came home.
Yeah.
There's a question here, and this kind of is a, a bigger issue, I guess, but it depends on how you want to look at it. The question is, would you support PA's bid to become a political party? PA is the Patriotic Alternative. They're a party that, like in, for example, Germany with the Alternative for Deutschland, the parties in France that are headed by Marine Le Pen. These are parties that advocate for the reduction in immigration and also the removal of special status and protected classes. Would you support, because these kind of parties, especially in Anglo countries, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, have a very hard time being organized into political parties because they aren't allowed political party status. Would you support the ability for any group of people that organizes to a certain threshold of people to be able to organize politically? And I guess I could also ask that question: would you support, which basically the check is in the mail on this one? There's going to be Islamic parties forming in this country. So, and I'm saying that because from the country I come from, well, I haven't lived there for a long time, but in Canada, we have a party called the Bloc Québécois, and it's basically an ethnic, racial, political party, and it only operates in the French part of Canada, but their main goal is to just break the country apart, is what they want. They don't want to live with Anglo Canadians. They want to cut the country. They want to have French Canada just go off and be its own country. We don't want to live with you Anglo people anymore. And they get elected to just cause trouble in the parliament. So would you support, let's say, for example, a party like Patriotic Alternative, or a party that would say be Islamic and wants the institution of Sharia law in the counties where they live?
Well, there's two questions there. Was one, would I join such a party? I would say the answer to that is no.
No.
Should such parties be allowed to exist? Well, I don't know. You have to look into that carefully, because if they're a party which systematically discriminates against another section of the population, that under normal law is not what one would expect to have in a democracy, you see. So I think there's questions, but my normal view of anyone organising is they should be allowed to organise a party on anything, but it shouldn't be something which discriminates against others.
But discrimination, it depends on how you label it. For example, like in Canada, there's if you're an Anglophone Canadian in Quebec, there's a lot of discrimination against you. Like from the government, like there are language laws, there are all manner of things, but because it's coming from a protected class of people, it's not considered because French is a protected class in
when
Canada.
you put it like that, I would say that's wrong. Right? You see, because the law is then manipulating rights. And the law shouldn't be there to manipulate rights away. The law should be there to support people's rights. I mean, obviously, this is getting technical, but if there's stuff like this happens in London, we would set up some big forum to discuss this.
Okay, this is a great question. We've talked about it before, the Bank of England, but would you support, as Mayor of London, an audit of the Bank of London? I think they're trying to, with transparent public listing of spending.
Yes,
transparent list of spending.
Completely. The whole lot should be open. Open the books, I would say, for all of them. Open the books of every weapons manufacturer, every one of these mega corporations involved in war and killing, and open all the books. I mean, absolutely. Accountability. Accountability applies to money, it applies to politics, and it applies to science, and it's going on all these fields, and we have to bring it back.
All right. I'm going to ask maybe one more question because we've been going for about what is it now? An hour and 40 minutes. It looks like me around there, and I don't want to keep you up. I don't want to
It's
take over the
okay.
entire Sunday because we've
Okay.
had so many questions here.
It's
And I'm
nice.
sorry for the ones. I'm very sorry for guys for the ones I haven't been able to answer because
Sure.
some of them would just break terms of these platforms like that I'm streaming on. You guys have to understand that these platforms are absolutely censorious, and you can't talk about things like the COVID vaccine, guys. We can't talk about these things. We can't talk about certain aspects of things that are going on. But I'll do a few more. If you want to have a
Okay.
question, as I said, I'll put it, guys. As I said it before, you put a Q before the question you want to ask, and then you just ask the question with a question mark. Okay. What do you think about X? Okay, so let's see. This is a question I wouldn't even be able to answer, but it seems kind of maybe it's has Piers read anything on the managerial revolution? I wouldn't even know how to answer that question myself. So
So
I
no, I
wouldn't
haven't
even
read
know.
anything on that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will do
because
if I become mayor. I'll read anything you put
yeah,
before me.
I haven't
Reasonably.
read anything. I wouldn't even know what that would even mean, to be honest with you. Let's see. Let's see. Maybe a couple more
Well,
guys,
it's
and
about
we'll.
making things more efficient, essentially. But I'm all for efficiency, but not for dictatorship.
I think maybe it probably has to do with things like, getting, I have no idea, but what would you say to, I mean, there's not a lot of manufacturing going on in this country, but what
No.
would you say? Okay, here's a question I would ask you is that
Okay.
AI, and, there's a lot
Oh,
of
it could be about
people,
AI.
including, well, a lot of people, including Elon Musk, is talking about, in the future, this could be the death of humankind. But what do you
Mm.
think about all of these jobs that are going to be lost? I mean, for example, you're already seeing artists that are crying their eyes out because they're never going to make money anymore if somebody can just type into an AI generator if they're making a product or something and they need something to go with it. I want an elf in a bikini and I want him riding a horse and make a volcano exploding behind, and these things can just generate it. But my question is it's already getting into jobs like insurance. It's getting into jobs almost anything where a computer is being used.
Yeah.
What would you do in order? Well, how would you deal with AI? I guess is the question in terms
Well, I would
of
say,
how
yeah,
it
the
would affect the
priority,
people.
yeah, the priority has to be human intelligence, not artificial intelligence. Um,
Mhm,
these measures are to make profit and also control, because the AI, of course, can be controlled by somebody to produce all sorts of outcomes. Now, when I go into these supermarkets, I go down out near where I work, I go in and I always go to the cash. And I say to the guys who have to, help me buy something in cash, I said, look, your job is over there. And I point to these machines. And, what we have is the public now doing all this work, or with a machine, which the workers in there have been removed from. And that's just a
mhm,
simple case. So use cash can overcome some of these things, but the AI revolution, if it is in general, no, I'm against it. We have to have human intelligence. There can be some instances, yes, where AI is useful, such as, well, neural nets is an old thing which we've used in forecasting, but we don't use it anymore. Interestingly, we find it doesn't help us. So I would say human intelligence, not artificial intelligence, and
okay.
it's a thing we'd have to look at in practical terms in London about its encroachment on, well, on human interaction. I mean, we
Hmm,
need human interaction.
hmm. Okay, this is a question that came from Gray Zone 7, and he asks, "What would you do about the money laundering in London?" And and in quotes, he says barber shops. And I could add to that, since I've got here, I've been talking with people about the candy shops along Oxford Street.
Yes.
Uh, so, for example, these things are for people that are haven't been to London. There are Oxford Street. Just imagine the main high street in your town, the main street where all of the high end Zara and well, not even high end. They have H&M or Gap, or they also have Gucci or whatever. It's a big shopping street, but and probably has the most expensive retail rents in the UK, I would imagine. Maybe not, maybe in Mayfair or somewhere, but generally speaking, very high rents. And along this street, there's just candy shops with, I don't know, candy canes and just sugary things, and nobody's ever in these things. My friend has told me that people that have tried to film them, people come out and threaten them with violence, which I've been listening to these stories. So the question would be, and I'm just adding candy shops on Oxford Street to this question. What would you do about money laundering? Barber shops, candy shops, these kind of people, all the money laundering that's going on in the street.
Two things I'd like to say about money laundering. First of all these shops, no, I agree. It's very strange. We've got lots of barber shops around here all of a sudden. And, I can't see them raising the money because there's not enough people. The footfall isn't enough. And definitely so with the sweet shops. So I would ask the police, I'd be in charge of the Metropolitan Police. I said, look, we want an investigation into every one of these shops. What is their income? What is their expenditure? How are they actually paying the high rent which happens on these places? And, we could get to the bottom of it. Why aren't the police doing that now? Good question. Why isn't the Mayor of London taking measures? That's the first thing. The second one is about the housing question in London. London is the money laundering capital of the world. And in Oxford Street, for example, there's a block of flats there which is entirely empty, which are changing hands. Each flat, two bedroom flats, are changing hands for £6 million each. And they
for 2 bedroom flats, guys. And for those of you that aren't aware what a pound is, that's close to $10 million US.
That's right.
For a 2 bedroom flat.
That's right. It's insane. Now, that is a money laundering operation, and it's all over London. There's huge numbers of these properties empty in London, where they're banking or hoping for value increases, which they happen because of the shortage. So they're buying and selling these empty properties. And bear in mind, a property that's empty is worth more than one which is occupied, because if you want to trade it or use it, you've got to get people out, so on. So that's why they're kept empty. And there is tens of thousands more empty properties owned by mega corporations from outside the country who are just there money laundering and so forth. And there's probably 250,000 such empty properties in London as a whole. And I would take action against those as well.
Just for those that aren't aware, I myself am in London right now, and I can vouch for everything that Piers is saying right now. When I take one of those the red buses they have here in London, and I cross into Zone 1, which is Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes. Anyone who remembers Sherlock Holmes?
Put him on the case.
Yeah. When you cross over into Zone 1. You go through this when I go down, because I'm living in a little bit in North London in a place called, I won't say, I'm not going to dox myself, but I'm living near where the Beatles had their famous
Abbey Road
thing. Yeah, I'm living near there. Not on Abbey Road, but
no.
Anyway, kind of close. But I'm not going to dox myself where I live. But there's an like when you get in there, right as you cross that road, there's a beautiful neighborhood called Marylebone, and at nighttime, you walk through this neighborhood, and there's just no lights on in any of the houses. Like there's just nobody in this. You go down this street, and there's like six-story apartment buildings on both sides, and you might see like 3 lights in these huge apartment buildings, and there's nobody in there. Nobody. And this goes into my next question. This one's coming from All Seeing Otto, and he's saying, why are the British, why are we only manufacturing low quality housing estates? Well, I guess he's saying that the quality of the housing estates is not good enough. Why is that?
Well, it is very interesting, isn't it? The cost of producing buildings now is lower than it's ever been in the history of time, right? Yet the housing crisis in London is probably worse than it's ever been. So there are complete games going on. Why are they actually even producing such low quality when there's so much money around? Well, it's just, again, profits. You see, there's been systematic destruction of council housing, moving people in, privatising the council areas, knocking them down, replacing them with these skyscrapers for speculative purposes, or something in the future shoveling people into them. Who knows what's going on, in their minds? But it is completely wrong. Now, I was active in the Labour Party some years ago on this, and I said, you knock down any of these, you've got to rebuild equal numbers of council housing and let everybody come back into the area. Well, the council agreed, but they lied, because they haven't replaced, it's near Elephant and Castle, this area, the Haygate Estate it was called. They haven't replaced any one of those houses they knocked down by a council house, and a lot of people were rehoused beyond the M25, which is that means they were rehoused outside London. It was an abomination, and this is just an example. It's happened in a lot of places. And I would go back into democratic council housing where things are built properly, and I'm living in one
good quality.
Good quality housing, which is built to last, and people have secure rental arrangements.
Okay, I've got two kind of offbeat questions. I'll let you answer one of them because they're kind of offbeat. They have nothing to do, but I think the audience is enjoying the conversation. Okay, you could either choose what does Piers think of David Icke, or what would you say about chemtrails? You can answer either one of those. I'll let you.
Either one of them.
Yeah. You can either answer what does Piers think about David Icke, or what does Piers think on chemtrails?
Well, I met David Icke. He's a great guy, but let's not answer that one. Let's go to the chemtrails, because I think people are very worried about these things. Chemtrails. There are chemtrails up there. People, the powers that be are putting things in there, into the air. Some things that happen in cloud formations are perfectly natural, I have to say. So be careful when you say something up there is a chemtrail. They're not all chemtrails. But the Bill Gates and others have said, yes, we're putting things in the air to save the planet, right? And therefore they get people on their side thinking, yes, this is important to stop runaway heating or something crazy. Well, really, they're not doing that. They're putting other things which I think are damaging to the environment and to farming, and quite likely poisonous and contributing to illnesses. So I don't want to say everything you see is chemtrails. No, they're not. You've got to be careful about this and understand what planes are doing or not doing, but it is real. And the farmers themselves are very upset, I should say. We didn't talk much about farming, but I would say I support all the farmers' opposition to attacks against them. No farmers, no food, I say. But back to the chemtrails, yes. There was a government, a committee in the House of Parliament investigating chemtrails, and it terminated, or geoengineering. Oh, this has gone off.
No, I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Everybody can hear you.
Been updated. Oh, okay. The terminated its activities early, which suggests there is something going on which they don't want us to know about, or it's improper thing injected in the atmosphere. So nothing to do with climate, but that is their cover. So there we are. Can you hear me?
I think that. Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can
you see me?
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Everybody can see you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can hear and see you. Yeah, no problem.
That's fantastic.
Everybody can hear.
I can't see you anymore, but I don't know why that is. Your ad block has been something. Oh, let's close that. Oh, you're back.
Probably your ad block is okay. Now this is a question that's been upvoted by many people, so it doesn't have really a lot to do with London, but the question is, it comes from Dave S. Would Piers support the prosecution of Tony Blair as a war criminal? And I guess he's referring to the Iraq War and the Afghan.
Yes, I would definitely. Tony Blair is a war criminal. He should be prosecuted. He should be in prison now, along with Netanyahu and a whole lot of others.
Okay,
definitely. And I would tell the Metropolitan Police. In fact, you see, I'd be in charge of the Metropolitan Police. I'd say, look, guys, tell me, when are you going to go and arrest Tony Blair? Or maybe I wouldn't tell them. I'll just say, do it now before he moves.
Mm. So we've got you know, some people. There's a lot of people in here. Hey, this. I just want to have you. You don't have to answer this one, but I just want you to be aware of the questions that are being asked, because people are saying, a lot of people are saying hate speech laws and immigration need to be stopped. All of these other questions are nonsense. Let me see. I guess
hate
this is a
speech laws
question
have to
about.
end. It's just mad. They're just crazy things
Yeah.
to divide and confuse us. You know.
Okay, well then here's the question. I guess this
I'm,
would be another one that's along the
against people
lines. This
hating
is
it. Yes. Carry
but
on.
this question seems like there's a lot of questions that relate to this in the thing, and this is a question that says, what is Pierre's stance on the level of immigration that we have now? I guess he's talking about into the United Kingdom.
Yes. Well, it is. Well,
You know, so
obviously,
yeah,
you know, the key issue is blood. But you know, if you want to talk about that, then it's been engineered by Tony Blair and others to bring people in to make us upset. All right, if there's a
yeah.
lot coming from Albania, why are they coming from Albania? Should we talk to the government of Albania and say, well, you know, what's going on here? Why can't you build your own industry and so on?
Yeah.
And you know, deal with things in a whole picture. But everyone's rights, ethnic rights, have to be supported, and that does include people in Britain who, you know, they see
Okay.
their way of
Yeah.
life being undermined, or well, yes, that's what they see or feel, or certainly a number of people feel and see that.
Okay. Well, here's a bit of a hard question.
Okay.
Question: you say that the law should be applied evenly, but shouldn't the tax law also be applied equally? Why doesn't this apply to the weapons manufacturers?
Well, well,
I think that might be two questions. I think that might be two questions.
okay. Laws have to be
So
applied evenly.
evenly, but shouldn't the tax laws also be applied evenly? So I guess he's against regressive taxation or taxation depending, like
Well,
the higher
yeah,
your
I'd say
income, the more taxes you pay.
we're
Like not
discriminating
like
against arms manufacturers, you mean?
yeah,
Well,
like
yes,
no,
I am in
I think
favor of
that's
discriminating
yeah.
against
Sorry, go
arms
ahead.
manufacturers. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, okay. Well, what we're saying is you have to have a licensing system. Like taxis, you see, you have to have a license to drive to make sure they're okay. And the same with weapons manufacturers or the industry.
Mhm.
They kill people. I mean, that's
Okay,
difference. So
yeah, it's a little bit
they
different than serving a cup of coffee.
completely so.
Mm.
Look, we are completely serious about this. So the warmongers have to be controlled, taxed, or leave the country.
Yeah, or get out. Yeah.
Yeah, or get out. I mean,
Well,
you know,
we got a couple. We got a funny question. You don't have to answer this. I just want to keep because a lot of people are really enjoying this. We've got
okay.
on all platforms. We've got a few thousand people watching right now, so you've got a
Well,
big
fantastic.
audience
It's
right
my
now. At
birthday,
least on
guys.
the
Remember.
yeah. There's a question from Streaky Bacon. Who's the hardest? I guess who's the hardest bloke? You or your brother Jeremy? Who's the harder bloke?
The harder bloke, meaning what?
I don't know, like who? I guess who can drink more pints? Who's better in a fist fight?
Well,
I don't even know what that would mean, to be honest.
we don't.
It's
Neither of us drink much. I don't drink at all. Alcohol, that
mhm,
is. Um,
yeah,
I can run faster than him because I used to be, you know, I was in Imperial College Cross Country Club and ran against University of
right.
London and so forth. So I'm a better runner than him, if that's what you want. But
Okay,
and I'm better at maths and physics than him. But you know, he knows more about history than I do.
yeah.
If that's a question.
All right. Well, I've got a lot of people in here. I just want to. There's a lot of this in the chats across the different platforms because, guys, if you want to watch this, if you don't want to be on YouTube, you can watch it on. We're live on Twitter. We're live on Rumble. We're live on a whole sort and Facebook. We're live on about 7 or 8 platforms right now.
Wow.
Just in case you don't want to watch it, guys. So I've got an amalgamation of all the people who are watching. A lot of people are saying, "Okay, you've got my vote, sir," but I think he also needs to basically we'll get to that in the end.
We need the money. Put the money in.
Yeah,
We can sort out the legalities of overseas donors. Don't worry. There's we'll make sure everything is proper. Obviously, to stand, I have to make sure it's proper. But if the money's in, that will make it possible to break. It was going to change everything. It's going to avoid a world war. It's going to change the whole narrative of things in London. I mean, lots of things will follow if I become mayor. First thing
And what he's saying, guys, it's his birthday. It's his birthday, and he's looking for campaign donations so he can can run for the mayor of London against the incumbent Sadiq Khan, which I think a lot of you, I know for a fact, a lot of people in my audience actually quite loathe. He's not a very well liked person. I don't think many people in my audience like Boris Johnson, and they don't like Tony Blair. I mean, I don't think they like this new guy Starmer, and they don't like Sunak. It's like
I don't know. I agree. And all the circus, they all must go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll give you a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up and give you a chance to give your spiel to everyone else.
Okay.
Let's see. MP raised a concern, and none of your Scottish. I don't even know what this is. An MP raised deep concern for the non-return of Scottish salmon. Can you add to this? I have no idea. And that, guys, I don't think that has anything to do with London. So it's. I think it's a great question.
Can't do that.
But I
like salmon sandwiches, by the way.
Okay. But yeah, me too.
Well, they're Scottish salmon, probably.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, this is a tricky question, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But what is Piers' thoughts on a Second Amendment equivalent for the United Kingdom, meaning the right to bear arms like they do in the United States? And I should say Canada has the same thing. Canada is a very well-armed country. But I think because of historical and demographic reasons, it doesn't have the same level of gun crime. But what are your thoughts? Do you think a Second Amendment equivalent for the United Kingdom would be a good thing or a bad thing?
I think, I understand the arguments on both sides. I think it's not a simple question because the cultural different. But, objectively, you could argue, well, if everyone's armed, they're not going to allow themselves to be, governed by a tyranny. But on the other hand, they might be shooting each other and so forth. So, look, it's a national debate which should be had. I would say that.
Okay.
And Mayor of London, yes. But, most guns and weapons are being used to kill people around the world. Blood. And I'm standing for peace now, which definitely means end the use of these arms to, what's happening, bombing of innocent people in Gaza, the Yemen.
Absolutely.
Ukraine, all those tanks, my God. I mean, you might as well say, look, should everyone have a tank? No, I mean, come on, we can go mad talking on these things. Let's be clear.
I agree.
Really want any arms, but the arms we're talking about is.
Okay, I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you two, maybe three more questions, and then we're going to wrap it up. We're going to give you a chance to talk to the audience about what. And the audience that we have right now, most of the people are not going to see this live, and I appreciate everybody who is here live. But most of the people that watch this aren't going to be able to ask you a question. So we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes. But I'm going to ask you just a fun question and then a couple serious ones. Okay. What is Piers' favorite British historical site to visit? And that comes from Mama JF, but I don't think the real Mama JF.
Favorite British historical
site to visit?
I like Avebury, actually. Avebury is a stone circle and a ditch, which is in Wiltshire as well, near to Stonehenge, but it's actually older. Very interesting place. That's my favourite historical site to visit.
If anybody's interested in that, I believe that stone circle was used in the 1990s movie Strange Fruit. It's a comedy movie, guys, that about a 1970s band that comes back together in the 90s, and they talk about their time. And there's a scene in that circle if anyone wants to see it.
Yeah, it's kind of magical place. There's a hill there called Silver Hill. It's so amazing. It's just it's probably artificial, i.e., made by people. There's a lot of mysterious things there. Just go there.
Okay. We'll ask a general question, then we'll ask two more on London, and then we'll wrap it up, guys.
Okay.
Get it in there because I'm going to choose what I think are the best. So one more general after this one, two on London, and then we're going to wrap it up with Piers. Remember to put a Q into the question. This one comes from Max Smith. Are politicians controlled by global elites, or do you believe that they're controlled like by global elites, also maybe globalists? And how do we stop their plans to control the population? And I guess this means all things like digital currencies, destroyed. Like, for example, in the Netherlands, you're seeing them kicking farmers off their land, taking their lands. You're seeing all manner of the attempt at controlling populations around the world. So do you believe that politicians, or at least some, are controlled by global elites? And how do we stop their plans to control us?
Most of them are controlled by global elites, either directly or indirectly. You see, the party structures are controlled. The leaders of the parties are controlled. They've been in various whatever Klaus Schwab chambers of education, who knows, or brainwashing. So they get to be told, look, you go this way, you can go up the party. If you go the other way, you're going down and out, and your constituency won't get the backing it needs to get elected, and so on. So it's manipulation, bribery, blackmailing all the time. So most politicians, yes, are, and I have conversations with some of them, and they just say, oh, Piers, well, can't do that because, and I say, oh, you mean the drug companies, or you mean World Economic Forum? I said, yes, that's right, but the influences come in indirect, covered ways. How to beat it is action from below, because in the end, all of the program of the World Economic Forum and the mega corporations has to actually be implemented through people complying. You see, the ultra low emission zone, for example, part of zoning, part of taxing people and so on to control them, that has been broken basically by people like me and others, driving at will, not paying, and so forth. That's one example. Things like the digital ID currency, well, that can be prevented if people insist on cash everywhere. And I've been doing that. So it's practical things from below. And there's a whole lot of them. And if you go to the United Front, these things are talked about a bit more. On the question of farming, I think there's really fantastic opposition to what's going on from the farmers. You see, they're saying no farmers, no food. They're driving around, blocking whole countries in the case of Netherlands. And
Germany as well. Germany as well.
Germany too, lots of them. See, just asking politicians to do something is the circus, right? Politicians will say, Labour's going to say, well, we're more against farmers than the Tories, or for them, or whatever. Okay, so you vote for one and the other, but the same thing will happen. It's you can't rely on the circus. The farmers' action from below, I think, is of historic importance in the whole of Europe. There hasn't been much of it in Britain. There's been a bit, but there should be a lot more. And I lived in the countryside for quite a long time before I came to London. My first 18 years I've lived entirely in the countryside. So I know a bit about them, and I sell weather forecasts to farmers. So, I do know a bit about it. And they are being, they're being paid money to not grow food. They're paid money to plant trees instead. Well, we're not against trees, but we got to eat. So, as mayor of London, you don't have much control over agriculture, but certainly I'd be raising questions. I would be saying, look, guys, we should help the farmers set up their own chain of food supply, so you get food coming straight from the farms to London. And there's a few places in London where you can buy farm produce straight away. But that is the answer to supermarkets. And it is the answer to the control of farming, so they can all get their stuff. I mean, the amount of money that a farmer gets for a loaf of bread is infinitesimal. These things are just not fair. The whole issue there to be discussed, and I would start debate on that as the mayor of London.
Okay, we have another question. Hold on. And this is just a question. You don't have to answer it because it's kind of personal question. But the question is, are you Christian? I'm going to vote for you either way, but I'd like to know. And that comes from Alex Buchanan.
Well, I certainly brought up as a Christian. and more and more I find I'm believing these things. But I have to say that I'm not a total understanding of it. I'm not a Muslim, but I have some very close Muslim friends. So it's not. I don't think of myself in those terms. I think spirituality and God even are issues which I'm able to cope with better than I used to be able to.
Okay, great.
I appreciate it's not an easy answer, but
no, it's religion. Religion is probably one of the most difficult.
Sometimes
subjects.
I have dreams that seem to mean things. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Does that mean I'm a Christian, or it doesn't mean I'm a Christian or a Muslim or anything? It means that there's more to the world than is dreamt of in thy philosophy, as Horatio, as it said in Shakespeare. You see, I'm a physicist, so there's a lot of things we don't understand. I mean, there's people who know nothing go on about quantum mechanics and God. That's what it is. That's just words. But I would say there's lots of things in physics which are not understood, lots of theories in physics which are incorrect, which it doesn't mean God exists or not. I'm not saying that either way, but let's say physics is not the answer to everything. Though when I was a child, I believed it was, which is why I went into it. It's certainly a big part of the answer, but not the answer.
We're gonna do a couple more on London, guys, and then we're gonna finish it up. The question comes from Alex Davis, and he asks, would PIERS ban DEI recruitment from the Met Police? I believe that means diversity, equity, inclusion. I guess what he's asking is, would you remove?
It's ridiculous.
Like meritocracy versus quotas.
Yeah, look, you've got to have
police officers.
Quotas are nonsense. I mean, well, no, okay. There can be a place for quotas if some group is clearly discriminated against. But look, I've seen police. I've been arrested by them. I mean, my first arrest on the 16th of May 2020 was they put a girl, a sort of 5 foot something girl, to arrest me, and she's so nervous she just rammed the handcuffs on me. And I said, hang on, please, that's too tight. And she was so nervous and so small. I think she was put there because they knew, look, Piers is not going to start wrestling with a girl, is he? So, and if he does, bad press and so on. Now, look, see, frankly, she shouldn't be in the police doing such a job. If you want to arrest somebody, you might as well do it.
Well, they used to have, like, it's like firefighters. They used to have height requirements. They had to be able to pick something up, be able to throw 100 pounds over their shoulder and carry this kind of thing. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And some coppers do have to. You would have to use force when it comes to cars getting in the way, and they've got to shunt things and so on. No, the girl would have been better. In the back office, she can still be in the police, but in the back office, no. This equal ops stuff is gone too far, right? I mean, you have to have some sort of things to, some sort of minor quotas maybe, but this stuff is just nonsense.
Okay,
and it weakens the functioning of the organisations where this is imposed.
This is going back to we were talking earlier in the stream. For those of you guys who have just joined us, we've talked about these questions already. But this is a little bit of a tricky one, and again, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. And because I think it's a question of vocabulary, and it's something that's very, I would say, it's divisive. The question, but would you describe the actions of the IDF? So that means the Israeli Defense Forces, I believe, in Gaza as a genocide.
Well, yes,
you don't have to.
I would think it's a fair description in terms of a killing of large numbers. But what you see, what is their aim? Their aim is to, as far as I can see, depopulate Gaza, which logically is a genocide. Other people have been killed or they've been forced out. And the legal definitions, I understand, of the word genocide does include that, which is why the International Court said that why the charge was genocide. Now, look, there's legalities about the precise use of the word. So I won't go there either way, except to say, look, that's a fair description. And if you want to know if it's correct or not, look at the legality of the International Court. But what we say is we have to end this bloodshed. Bloodshed is definitely, a real word. Can't argue about it. Bloodshed must end. We stand for peace now. And there has to be that, or the world is going to go into a much, much, much more dangerous place, and more will die. We're against bloodshed.
I completely agree. Now, maybe second to last question, guys. What do you think of Victoria Nuland's resignation? Now, if for the chat, if you're not, or for the viewers that are not aware of it, Victoria Nuland is an infamous bureaucrat in the United States State Department. She is basically heralded as the creator and she midwifed, I think is the term they use. She midwifed the Maidan revolution, the color revolution in Ukraine in 2014. And she's famously, when they were trying to pick the future leader of Ukraine, she's famous. She was caught on tape famously saying, "F the EU, we don't care what they think." And she's been possibly one of the most bloodthirsty people insofar as wanting to continue the war in Ukraine. She's to a point of what seems like hysterical insanity. Now, and just out of the blue, and she's not at retirement age yet. She's only 62, I believe. She just up and supposedly is retired. Well, what do you think about that? Or if you're not aware, if you can't answer, that's fine too.
Well, arrested, I would say. No, I don't know much about it, but I know enough from what you could say. Well, she should be arrested and in prison. I mean, for perhaps she should be arrested for genocide, certainly mass murder, or implementing policies which have caused completely unnecessary death. I mean, she's a war criminal like Tony Blair. There's a whole lot of them. There's loads of, well, let's say there are many war criminals, all of whom should be arrested. Tony Blair is one, and she's another. And the politicians complicit in these wars as well should be arrested, and also find out what their payback has been. I mean, some of them ought to be arrested, the leaders of these parties, or the deputy leaders, all of them. Why do they go along with this stuff? What are they being given? Have a look at their bank accounts. Open the books.
Okay. Now I'm gonna wrap it up, guys. So thanks very much for all of the questions that you've asked. They've been really insightful. Some have been funny, and I hope you've enjoyed that section of the live stream. I know I did. Actually, I'm going to ask this question because a lot of people thumbed it up, and then we'll get into the conclusion, and we can go through actually a little bit more of the serious stuff. Question from Streaky Bacon. Question is, has Piers got a favorite pier? Perhaps Brighton, Southend, or another pier somewhere.
Weston-super-Mare. Well, or no, with a question. I don't know. I'm not sure which is my favourite pier. I like the piers in Brighton. That's for sure. I do like them.
I like that. I like the one in Clacton-on-Sea as well, but the Brighton one's the best. I agree.
Yes. Yeah. We got discrimination against piers there. They should all be listed so I could have a big.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. All right. So, and a lot of guys, so there's a lot of question on what is his stance on Gaza, DEI. There's a lot of questions. If you just rewatch, go back a little bit, it might be people that have arrived earlier. But that's it. So what I'd like to do is just we're going to finish it up, Piers, and I want to say thanks very much for being here.
Yes.
Can you just tell us again, because we talked about it at the beginning, what you're running for the mayor of London? What is your platform? What is your goals? And what do you hope to accomplish?
Right. I'm running for mayor of London as the Peace Now candidate to end all these wars happening around the world and taking certain practical measures against the warmongers. And the reason for this is, if we don't do this, we're going to develop into a world war, very likely. The measures are practical measures that I can do as Mayor of London to license the warmongers to be there, tax them, make them move out, and make war business unprofitable. I mean, obviously, the first thing would be to stop government funding, and they should spend money on other things. But when it comes to the money, they do have investors. They could invest in other things if we tax them enough. Just like taxi cabs have to be licensed, then warmongers have to be licensed. And we'd be completely serious about this. We would encourage any peace initiatives we could help with around the world. There could be some where obviously there should have been a ceasefire in Ukraine ages ago, but politicians meddled and stopped it. I mean, any initiative happening to have a ceasefire in a conference there in anywhere, I would help so far as I could.
Okay, great. And now we're also talking about funding. Obviously, yes. To run a political campaign, you need funding. And I should state, guys, again, it's in the ticker below. And it's also in the description. If you don't want to just, you can find how to find him. You can find him on all of the sort of social media platforms that are listed there, and just click on them. And
it's very important.
Yeah.
Guys, you see, look,
is there anything you want to say on that?
Yes, I do. We can't do this just by hope. We have to be practical. This election will make such a difference. One, if I can stand, and two, if I win. Can't win until I've stood. We need £24,000, right? In about in a short time, in a week or so. So please give as generously as you can. There are links there. It's practical. You can get in touch as well to give larger amounts directly, or give some money on the donor box. But again, you can put large monies there as well. All of these things are important. Look, think you could make the decisive difference about the future of even Europe and the world. I mean, that's true, because this is going to be so important, this election, because I'm standing for peace now, and all the other candidates of any significance, in fact, I think all of them are part of the blood lobby, if you like. I mean, whatever. They're all saying this or that has to be allowed. Well, no. We've got to have a different way of looking at the world. And if we don't go in this good way, an evil will come, new world tyranny will come, everything will be very, very grim. So please, it could be you that makes the difference.
Is there also, like, I know that you spend some time in Speaker's Corner. We talked about that earlier. Is there any chance that you'll be going there anytime soon where people could say hi? People that live in London?
I was there earlier, and had a good few little interviews and chats and so on. I normally go there every Sunday. It wasn't too many people there today because it was heavy rain. So
it really depends on the weather.
Yes. But we can have quite big meetings there when it's good weather.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap it up, Piers?
No, just think about your future. Think about your children. Think about these people dying unnecessarily in Gaza, in Palestine, in Ukraine, and in the Yemen, for example. These things must stop. Think about it. Imagine if you're there and this happens to your children. What would you do to stop it? And of course, in practical terms, again, you have the links there. Please give as generously as you can, and even find people who've got tons of money to get in touch. But everything counts. Thank you very much. And I would say, in summary, peace now.
An excellent sentiment. And I want to thank not only Piers for being here as our guest. I'd like to thank all of you watching across platforms, wherever you're watching it. I want to say thank you very much. I should say that no matter where you're watching it from, the hub on my computer, I'm getting all of your questions. I'm getting them from every platform that we're watching from. So you're not being excluded, whether you're on Trovo or you're on DLive or you're on X or you're on Facebook. I'm getting everything here. But I just want to say thank you very much for the audience, your questions for Piers. And I will see you all again very soon. I'll probably be having another stream tomorrow with our good friend George, or where's George? George McMillan, the American military contractor. He's left Iraq, he's left Afghanistan, he's starting himself. He's already started a consulting business for energy and the importance of not staving off energy from countries like this. And he'll be on tomorrow to talk about basically the some of the real reasons why the West, and America in particular, guys, are so headstrong in wanting to have the Iraq war be continued. Not the Iraq war, the Ukraine war, to continue at all costs. He'll go through a lot of the geopolitical issues, the energy issues, and the confluence between Russia, China, India as an emerging bloc associated also with the BRICS countries. So guys, that's probably going to be tomorrow night. Look out for that. And again, I want to say thanks to Piers for being here. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody in the audience for taking the time to be here. And Piers, do you want to let anything to say before we go?
No, just look in your heart. Peace now and action against the warmongers. We must do it. Thank you.
That's a great way to end it. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. And I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.